to be awareness through movement teachers, and your first port of call is your own bodily experience. Yeah, your own bodily experience becomes a huge resource for being able to know what's happening as you're watching someone else move. But I'm talking to you not as people generally in the public doing an awareness through movement class, but as people learning to do this work, learning to teach awareness through movement. Roll your head. Roll your head so that you can experience the movement of that part of your spine that you call your neck. So look for movement there to start with. What kinds of movements do you feel in your neck as you roll your head from side to side? Is it just a bending? Is it just a turning? What is it? How would you describe the experience? And when I ask you that, how do you describe the experience? There are two kinds of experiences going on. There's the qualitative experience. Oh, it feels soft here. It feels really turgid over there. And then there's also the experience associated with knowing what parts of you are moving where in space and at what speed and with how much force. And then once you've become clearer about what's happening in the neck, you can take your attention further afield and notice, does the rolling of the head through the motion of the neck start to influence the upper chest, the shoulder girdle, the spine inside the thorax? And it might, and it mightn't, and you might be aware of it, or you may not be aware of it. But unless you go looking, unless you go asking these questions, there is no answer that comes back. So yes, it's fantastic to be able to pay attention. To be able to pay attention with a particular question in mind, now, that's a different ball game. Please stop, bring your head to the middle. And perhaps for some of you, having rolled your head with this kind of attention, where you bring your head, where you return it to, could be a completely different place. There is now, maybe for some of you, a new middle. But only if you can discern it. Please roll onto your tummy, roll onto your front. Have your legs long on the floor, and then prop yourself up onto your forearms and elbows in a, I guess you could call that a sphinx position. and begin to make a circle with your head in space. And I would invite you to gradually involve those parts of yourself that you might think could assist you to make that circle smoother, more precise, lighter, easier, larger. And if you have one of those in mind, larger, easier, lighter, and then you go roaming with your attention through yourself, then that question starts to permeate all the way through. Is there a way of moving my pelvis that would make the circling of my head even lighter? Is there a way of moving my ribs that would make the circling so much smoother? Is there a way of attending to the length of my spine, right from the base of my neck to the tip of my tailbone, that could make the circling of my head larger? And if you have that question in mind, then you have already set up the parameters of whether you're doing it right or you're doing it wrong. Because if you're looking for a way of circling your head with a larger amplitude, then you know whether it is or it isn't. Whether you're moving your spine in a way that supports it or works against it. Let that be. Pause for a little bit, please. And please don't get me wrong in my intention. My intention is not to say you haven't been doing this. My intention is to reinforce that this is the activity that you're engaged in. You have all been doing this already. Now, let's see what happens when we make the position of the arm asymmetrical. So far, the arms have been symmetrical in every instance. Please come onto your tummy again, prop yourself up onto your forearms and elbows. And now, stay leaning on that right elbow and that right forearm and shift your weight more onto it. Shift your weight more onto that elbow, and then take that left arm, put it alongside yourself, lying long on the floor with the palm towards the ceiling. Alongside yourself, palm towards the ceiling, and there you are in an asymmetrical position, one arm supporting only. Don't use the left arm to support yourself. Yeah, you can put it behind your back if you like. Now, go ahead and make a circle. And in this new asymmetrical configuration, what internal resources can you draw upon to make the circle a circle Not an ellipse. What resources can you draw upon to make it lighter, smooth, easy? And you know that you don't have to stay propped up there for a long time. You can come out of that position, pause for a little while, refresh yourself, come back. And that's why so many of amazing scientific discoveries and discoveries in other fields often happen when the people actually go off on vacation, when they're away from the job at hand, when they're not fatigued. Let that be. Pause. Or I think there was a particular scientist that always kept a notebook by his bedside, and he'd wake up in the middle of the night and an idea would have popped into his dream and he'd write the idea down. So very often, new things come up when we're not working hard at them. I guess you could call it a kind of priming. The idea is primed, ready to come out. As soon as you release your grip, there it is. Come onto your tummies again. And this time, switch over. Prop yourself more onto the left forearm. Slide that right arm alongside yourself, palm to the ceiling, and begin to circle your head. And there's a high probability that when you're leaning on your left elbow and forearm like this, your whole trunk will be off to the left. You'll be leaning more on the left hip. You'll be leaning more throughout the length of that left leg. And so the way you shape this movement will be completely different compared to how you would do it on your two forearms. You're using completely different muscle synergies here. Similar, but different. Okay, and that looks like enough. Please rest. Roll onto your front. Prop yourself up on two elbows again. And now return to making a very simple movement of lowering the head forwards and down, and then lifting the head backwards and upwards. Go very slowly, very, very gently, in such a way that your breathing does not become disturbed. You could possibly lower your head so far down that you could see your navel. But you know, to see your navel would have to be lifted from the ground. You could take your head so far backwards that your navel could be fully pushing into the ground. And if at any moment along that trajectory of movement you feel that there's a little catch, a little glitch, just stop there a moment and notice, is there anything in yourself that you could just release a little bit? Maybe a little tension in the neck or something in the ribs at the back. Is there some place that you're just holding on to a little bit too firmly? And then continue. And you can use that tactic. You stop there and you just simply ask yourself, am I holding on someplace a little bit too much? Have I got my skeleton in a clutch? Am I clutching onto my skeleton? Now, the next time that you're taking your head upwards and backwards, could you let your face be on an imaginary horizon out in front of you? And if that's not possible, have your face a little bit lower towards the floor, but just as high as you can have your head is easy for you. And now in this position, intentionally move your eyes only to see the floor, and then move your eyes only towards the ceiling. So this is a movement of the eyes in the eye sockets. Your chest remains high. Your face stays towards a horizon or a little lower, depending on your ease. And it's just the eyes that are going up and down, as if to look towards your navel, and then as if to look towards the ceiling. And you know, the eyes also have muscles that move them, and those muscles can be strained. So please, as you move your eyes, don't strain the muscles of the eyes. Soft, easy, luxurious. Good. Let that be. Rest on your back, please. Take a full rest on your back. Notice your contact with the floor. And please roll your head from side to side and feel how that's going. Bring your head to the middle. And before you do anything else, just reflect for a moment. Was that instance of rolling the head different from what you experienced at the beginning? Please bend your legs, stand your feet, have your legs pointing towards the ceiling. And a few times, please lift your pelvis from the ground and put it down. Not as high as you can, just the distance that's comfortable. Lift it, lower it, lift it, lower it. If you need to reorganize your legs to make the lifting lighter, do so. And first of all, as you lift your pelvis, notice if anything changes in the shape of the back of your neck. As you lower your pelvis, Is there any change in the shape of the back of your neck? And then switch your attention to the front of yourself, and as you lift your pelvis, what happens to that distance between your chin and your upper chest? And as you lower your pelvis, what happens with that distance from your chin to the front of your chest? Okay. Next time your pelvis is lifted, could you please keep it lifted and put your hands behind your back, underneath yourself, and hold one wrist with one hand. If that's not possible, just simply put one hand on top of the other. If that's not possible, just rest the fingertips on top of each other. Now, keep your hands in that position underneath your lower back and begin to lower your pelvis to the floor with the intention of resting your pelvis fully on the floor. And see if it's possible for your lower back to just simply drape over your hands. Kind of like if you had a tablecloth, if you were setting a table and you threw it over the tablecloth would land on the table, and if there happened to be a spoon that you left behind, it would just drape over the spoon. And you go, oh, forgot to take that spoon out. Now, if you can't land your pelvis fully onto the floor, take your hands a little bit further apart, or take them a little higher, or whatever you need to do, until you find a position for your hands behind your back where the pelvis can fully land on the floor and your hands are still underneath you and behind you. Now, that's a lot of words. Sorry about that. Now, stay there. And notice the relationship between your upper chest and your chin and your upper chest. Is this the usual relationship that exists when you're lying on the floor, or is it different? Now, intentionally, staying in this configuration, move your chest towards your chin. And yes, it's one of those tricky moments. Even though I said chest, it doesn't mean that the rest of you does not get involved. So the breastbone will move towards the chin. Your collarbones will move towards the chin. The ribs at the front will move upwards towards the chin. And when you do that, some of you might experience that the amount that your lower back is leaning on your hands decreases. That when you take your chest towards your chin, your lower back arches more. So this hasn't got nothing to do with breathing. This is just one particular relationship between the chest and the spine. Now, do something else. Stop that, and now intentionally draw in your abdomen. Suck it in. And notice which way your chest goes relative to your chin. As you suck in that abdomen, where does the chest go? And what happens to the contact of your lower back with your hands? That drawing in of the abdomen is quite a contraction of the abdominal muscles. Make a little variation. You're still doing the same action, but lengthen out the right leg. Keep the left leg long. Keep the left leg bent. Lengthen out the right leg. And notice, do you suck in your abdomen a little differently when the legs are asymmetrical? And now change over the legs and have the left leg long and the right leg bent. And in some way, does this asymmetrical position of the legs change which side of the abdomen you use more strongly? Now bend both legs again. And one more variation before we stop. Could you now stay with your hands behind your back like that and do intentionally a pressing movement of the shoulder blades into the ground, into the floor behind you? It doesn't have to be a big press. Go looking for the ground behind you, try to press it with the shoulder blades. And notice what happens to the contact between your hands and the floor and your back. The pelvis stays on the floor. Good. Stop. Lift your pelvis, take the hands out, and let yourself lie on the floor in whichever position is comfortable to you. As you're lying there in whatever position you're in, please pay attention to your breathing. Notice whether it's the abdomen or whether it's the chest that you primarily feel is involved in the act of breathing. Which is it? Chest or abdomen? Or maybe it's equal. Could be equal. Or maybe neither. Maybe there's not much movement in your chest and maybe there's not much movement in your abdomen. Maybe the movement is happening somewhere else, like in your diaphragm. Because chances are, if you are relaxed, then you don't need much air. And if you don't need much air, your body doesn't have to move very much to get the air that it needs. Which means your diaphragm could be doing an ever so small movement and you're getting all the air that you need. And I could be walking around and looking at some of you and I wouldn't even notice very much movement going on. So this is the kind of breathing that happens when we're really, really kind of relaxed. Please come up onto your elbows so that you're propped up on your elbows and your forearms, and the back of your pelvis is on the floor. For those of you who are still with us. I'm so relaxed. Oh, we're gone. Which is a beautiful place to go in an awareness through movement lesson. And bend your legs, have your feet standing on the floor. And as much as you can, have your face directed towards an imaginary horizon. And very gently start to incline your head to the right, as if you wanted to bring your right ear towards your right shoulder, and return. And then incline your head a little bit to the left, as if you wanted to bring your left ear towards your left shoulder, and return. And do that for a little while, gradually making the movement a little bigger, and then a little bigger, and a little bigger. It's like you're creeping up. It's like you're sneaking up on the amplitude of the movement. Not all at once, but incrementally. Please let yourself do whatever you need to do with your shoulders to make that easier, whatever you need to do with your chest, but do stay propped up high on the elbows and the forearms. Don't let yourself sink down between the shoulders, or else there won't be much room to move. So it's a tilting of the head, not a turning, a tilting, side to side. And the next time you're at the right shoulder, start to make a circle that goes forwards and around and to the left until your left ear is near your left shoulder. And then go back to the right shoulder. And then return your head to vertical. So to the right shoulder, around in a little half circle to the left shoulder, back around to the right shoulder, and then bring the head to vertical. Rest as frequently as you like, for as long as you like, and then come back. Now, all those movements that you did, drawing in your abdomen and all that kind of stuff, you can use that here. For some of you, if you'd like to explore this idea, you can use the movements of the abdomen to actually send your head around in a circle. Oh, sorry, semicircle. My apologies. Semicircle. Now, change that over. Tilt your head to the left shoulder, and then from the left shoulder, make a semicircle forward and around to the right shoulder. Return to the left shoulder, and then bring the head upright. The ribs in the front can soften, can fold. The spine can become quite curved, rounded. The pelvis can roll on the floor. And the next time you find yourself returning to your left shoulder, could you just continue on around until you make a complete circle all the way around? And then another one, a complete circle all the way around. Expand the abdomen, draw in the abdomen. Flare the ribs at the front, bring the ribs together in the front. Shorten one side, lengthen one side. Everything that you've had a little nibble of. Good. And that's enough. Please stop. Pause for a while. So there are two very specific activities going on. One activity is moving your head through space in a kind of circular, and for some of you, elliptical orbit. So literally, your head is being carried around by your body. And then there's the second movement, which is that kind of rolling, articulate movement in your neck, that you're actually making kind of a rolling movement with your head and your neck while your head is being carried around in an orbit. Please come up onto your forearms and elbows again. Stand your feet on the floor, bend your legs. Okay. And now, if you want to start with your head lowered towards your chin, but if your head lower towards your chin, if you want to start with your head lower towards your chest, start there. If you'd like to start with your head inclined backwards, if that's what makes sense to you, start there. And start to make a circle from the place that you've chosen. So move your body, move your trunk, move your pelvis, move your spine, so that your head gets carried in a circle. And then imagine that you have one of those, airline pillows around your neck. And then think to yourself, as your head gets carried around, that you can roll your head on this airline pillow, which is just supporting your head at every moment, every moment, every moment. And the reason why this is so tricky to do is because you want to survive. It's that easy. The organs, the receptors that you rely on in your body to keep you upright, to know where you are in space, are now being moved around in a very unfamiliar way. The balance organs in your middle ear, your eyes, which locate you in space, everything's being moved around. And for those of you that this is very, very unfamiliar, your system is saying to you, no, don't do that. We need to know where we are. And so you'll stiffen up because it's not safe. So the only way forward is to take it a little bit at a time, and for in every moment, know where you are. And if that means opening your eyes, you open your eyes. If that means closing your eyes, because you can't stand seeing that visual field moving, you close your eyes, but get to know where you are. When your head is at your left shoulder, where are you looking? Where is your face directed? What's happening in your chest? Where is your pelvis on the ground? Ah, yes, the pelvis. There's ground underneath me. I'm leaning. That's fine. I can relax into the support of the ground, and I can relax into the support of my arms. I'm not going to fall. You can change direction whenever you like. If one direction is really unfamiliar, maybe circling your head in the other direction. You don't even have to make a complete circle. You can go around in that little portion of the circle that you are absolutely certain where you are at every moment. That's going to give you confidence. That's not only going to give you confidence, that's going to give you a feeling of safety. It will enable you to go a little further. So you're not just struggling against some crazy little habit. You're negotiating. I'm using that word intentionally. You are negotiating with a part of your nervous system that is built to keep you alive. And if you try to contradict that part of the nervous system, all you will get is strain, effort, and contradiction. Stop, pause again. Please roll to one side. Sit. Lean on the floor with your hands behind you. Have the soles of your feet together, or if it's more comfortable for you, just have your legs long. And so you're sitting up, all the way up. You're leaning on your hands, or the roller. You can actually lean on it. Beautiful, nice. Now, you've been moving your head a lot. So here's your opportunity to not move your head at all. Don't move your head. Move your eyes. Very, very gently, very slowly. Look a little bit to the left of you with your eyes and a little bit to the right. And when I say a little bit, I just mean maybe 15 degrees. 15 degrees, that's all. No strain. You don't want to strain those eye muscles. Just look a little bit left, a little bit right. And you can imagine that you're scanning the room. That will actually help for some of you. If you can imagine looking across the room with your eyes from left through to the right. Oh, yeah, there's the pillar. There's that list we signed up onto. There's that plug, the book, the projector, Zoran's lunchbox, computer, skeleton. And now bring your eyes to the middle. And now scan the room, but up and down. From directly in front of you, up along the wall to the ceiling, and then down along the wall to the floor. Make the movements as smooth as you can. You can do that sitting on the table if you want. You can do that there, but your head is back. Yeah, do that. That's good. Yep. Now look ahead of you, and then could you please scan the room in a very circular fashion? So look down in front of you, around to the left, up towards the ceiling, around and up, and then around to the right, and then around and down towards the floor. So now you're making a circle with your eyes. Keep checking in with yourself, making sure that you don't generate any sensation of nausea. Because some of us are so visually attuned that that's how we keep our balance. There are some individuals, if they close their eyes, they fall over. Even though they have fully functioning middle ear, they still fall over because they're visually oriented. That's how they keep their balance. Ask yourself, do you really have your head still? Yes, I have my head. It's still on top of my shoulders. Is your head still in space? Or is your head being sneaky and following your eyes? Okay, that's enough. Please lie on your back restfully. Now we've reached the very last section of this lesson, and you have an option here. If you are fully comfortable sitting on the floor, and I really mean that, if you love sitting on the floor and you can be upright and it's not a strain, please remain sitting on the floor. However, if you are not fully comfortable on the floor, please find a table to sit on, or there's some chairs in the back of the room. Sit in that. Please come up to sitting. Do not lean on your hands. Matter of fact, if you're sitting on the floor, just put the backs of your hands somewhere on your thighs. Do not lean on your hands. So what's this variation about? Given that you found all this freedom in here, is it possible to call upon that freedom even though you're not supporting yourself with your hands anymore? So you know something more than before. So please start to make a circle with your head in space. And you can start either with the head tilted backwards or tilted forwards or tilted to the left shoulder or tilted to the right shoulder, wherever it makes sense for you. But start to make a circle. A rolling circle with the head. Preferably without neck crunches. No crunching of the neck. And unless your pelvis is free to move, there's no point sitting on the floor. If you can't sit and let your pelvis go around the clock, you shouldn't be sitting on the floor. So please check that for yourself. As you take your head around in a circle, can your pelvis also go around in a circle? And when your head is forward, your pelvis will be back. And when your head is backwards, your pelvis will be rolled forwards. When your head is to the left, your pelvis will be to the right. When your head is to the right, your pelvis will be to the left. In other words, the head and the pelvis are always at the opposite end. And that is really a really honest invitation. If you really don't feel that the pelvis is free to roll, don't fake it. Just go to a chair. Life will be a lot more pleasant, and you'll find connections that you won't find if you insist on sitting on the floor. Show me. I'll turn off the mic just a second. So as you do these last few moments in the lesson, please remember that there is a particular form that you have been exploring in this lesson. And it's got something to do with that circling of the rib cage in the middle, what you just did before lunch. Do you remember that? That's what you're looking for. You're not going off and doing a different coordination. It's the coordination that's been threading through the whole lesson. Okay. A few more movements. For those of you that can remember this notion of a hula hoop, if you had a hula hoop around your lower ribs, could you touch your lower ribs to each little portion of that hula hoop? And as the rib cage goes backwards, the head goes forwards. As the rib cage goes forwards, the head goes backwards. As the rib cage goes to the left, the head goes to the right. As the rib cage goes to the right, the head goes to the left. Whew. Please stop. Let that be. Rest on your back. That's enough. That's enough. That's enough. So at the end of a training day, when we were doing our training over at Albert Park Lake, I'd have a long trip home. I'd have to catch a tram into town and then a train out to Heidelberg. So, you know, that was an hour and a quarter, an hour and a half. And I'd have a lot of time to write notes. And, you know, reflecting back on that time, it must have looked pretty weird, this guy sitting in the seat doing these kind of funny little squirming movements. I never noticed anybody making faces, but I'm sure I got some funny looks without knowing. So these movements will become part of your vocabulary. They just will. Roll your head a little bit left and right. Feel what that's like compared to the beginning. In terms of quality, in terms of range of motion, in terms of clarity, in terms of understanding. Okay. And would you please roll to one side, come up to standing, and feel what it's like to support your head above your feet. Above your pelvis, above your shoulders. Notice if there's a different sense in your chest, in the distance between the tips of the shoulders, in your contact with the floor. And please walk a little bit. Good. Please have a break, and we'll come back at just after 4.